It was always the plan to do this amount of seasons.
Hello everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture, and now that the dust has settled, I feel like it would be a good time to kind of take a look at the timeline and the situation and what happened in the build-up to Ncuti Gatwa regenerating. What happened in the process of the last year in the build-up to Ncuti Gatwa deciding to leave the show. The official line on this is that it was always the plan to do 2 seasons. But there's a lot of clues and a lot of evidence that suggests that this is not the case, and that something changed along the way. Now, in fact, I do know that things changed along the way. We've heard plenty of rumours, we've heard plenty of speculation. I've heard some things through the grapevine as well. But it does seem to be very clear that the decision to leave the show did come after the reality war had initially wrapped on filming. Now, before we get into that timeline, I think it really is important to point out here that the plan with Disney was to only ever do 2 seasons initially. So in that regard, yes, technically, Ncuti was on board to do only 2 seasons. But I'm pretty sure that this has been worked into a clever wordplay, whereby the plan was initially to do 2 seasons, but the intention was to continue on with more. A lot of clever wordplay here that makes it seem like this was always going to be Ncuti's plan, only to do 2 seasons and then leave. But we kind of all know that the plan for Disney was they were contracted for 2 seasons with the intent and hope to do more after that. So let's start by looking at April 2024. Now, this is about a month before season 1 started airing, and during which the time season 2 was still in production. And Ncuti explained that he just had to face the Daleks during his run on Doctor Who. This is what he said during a Radio Times interview. "I've heard chats about me not ever facing a Dalek. I'd be so angry if that's the case. By the time that I'm done with Doctor Who, I better have faced a Dalek. What on earth would be the point of me being Doctor Who without facing a Dalek?" Well, I hate to break it to you, Shoots, but you did in fact never face a Dalek. But the important thing to note here is that this comment was made after season 1 had been signed off and was about to air, and season 2 was already in production, suggesting that he didn't know at this point that that was going to be it for him. He thought that at some point down the line, in the future, in more seasons to come, that they were presumably about to start filming once they'd completed season 2, might include a Dalek story. This is not the line said by somebody who knows that they do not in fact face a Dalek and that they have already filmed their departure. So then let's jump to June 2024, which is midway through the transmission of season 1, and Russell T Davies told Radio Times, quote, "I'm working on the 4th script now for season 3. It's not actually commissioned, that's still up in the air, but that's the same for every TV programme. I shouldn't say we're confident because that's asking for a fool, but we're very confident to be honest, and we'll just keep going. Ncuti's off to do a play, The Importance of Being Earnest, and so we're coming back after that. Amazingly, we might be shooting those scripts early next year. Those scripts have to be ready by August for prep." I mean, how much more evidence do you need? It's right there, plain and simple. Russell T Davies was writing season 3, and Ncuti was coming back to shoot those episodes after his run in a play. At this point, there was no talk of Ncuti departing. It was all based around Ncuti's schedule. We've got the scripts written. Once we have the go-ahead, we can start shooting those. Ncuti will be available. No indication that this was going to be the end for Ncuti Gatwa at this point, June 2024. Then let's jump to October of 2024. So that's about 4 months after season 1 had finished airing. And Ncuti said this on the Graham Norton show, which was cut from the final episode of the show, which is quite telling. Now, it has since been revealed that this was something decided by the production team on the Graham Norton show for better drama or for a better edit. But I don't know. Now that we know what's happened, it does seem a little suspicious. This is what he said. "We did the 2nd series this year, the Christmas special is coming up, and we are filming a 3rd series next year." Again, more evidence that the plan was always to be doing a 3rd season. He was willing, he was ready, he wanted to come back and do season 3. They were all ready, prepared, they were going for it. Again, no indication that he wasn't going to be continuing in the role of the Doctor at this point, October 2024. He literally says it there. We're going to be filming season 3 next year. Then, between October 2024 and February 2025, something happened, and Ncuti made the decision to leave the show. Then in February 2025, reshoots took place for season 2 on a location that we now know was Belinda's house that we saw at the end of the reality war. So the episode was then reworked. Billie Piper was tacked on to the end of the episode there for the regeneration, and this is where we are now. Now, of course, there's been no official announcement or confirmation that those reshoots in February were to make this a regeneration story. There was a lot of speculation at the time that that was the case. Did turn out to be the case, but obviously there's not been any official word on that. But you don't need official word. If you use your eyes, it's very, very easy to spot. So let me just point out some evidence here in the show itself, in some of the behind the scenes footage, that is very, very clearly an indication that the reshoots that took place in February were in fact for the ending of this episode to rework it for a regeneration following Ncuti's decision to leave. Let's start by looking at Ruby's hair, which seems to change between being inside the TARDIS and then stepping out of it into Unit HQ, which in the episode is seconds. But if we want to look for an even more obvious indication of the reshoots in terms of appearance, then look no further than the additional scenes we had at the end of the episode that reworked or changed previous scenes of the Doctor and Belinda in the TARDIS to then add the mention of Poppy. If this was always the plan, then it makes the most sense that these would have been filmed all at once in anticipation for being needed later on. When they had the costumes, when they had the sets, all of that was already in place. If this was the intention, they would have filmed the scene after Robot Revolution when they shot the Robot Revolution. Look at these two shots side by side. It's so plain to see when they're right next to each other. So you have one here that was in the Robot Revolution, and then you have another that was the additional scene that was supposed to be the reworking of that scene that we saw at the end of the reality war. Her hair is in an entirely different style. It's not just they didn't quite match it up like Ruby's, it's in a completely different style. You can't unsee that. Her eyebrows, completely different shape, but these are supposed to be in the same moment. Obviously, again, if you're just watching the episode, perhaps you wouldn't have noticed these things. But once you put these images side by side, it's very difficult not to be able to clearly see that these shots do not match up and were clearly filmed massively apart from each other, indicating that scenes were reshot and added to facilitate this becoming a regeneration story. Then we have what was supposed to be the original ending for season 2, for the reality war. Now, the first hint of this we saw was in an image that was released, presumably from the finale, of the Doctor and Belinda dancing in a nightclub, very happy. There's some screens behind them that I'm fairly certain say Happy May Day. So presumably this would have been the more happy, exciting, cheerful ending that was supposed to be at the end of the reality war, and kind of makes the most sense. Now, it then was seemingly confirmed further when the TikTok account for the young actress who played Captain Poppy, Sienna Robin Mavanga Phipps, which is run by her mother, by the way, there's not a toddler running a TikTok account, but they shared a purported leaked account description of what the original ending was supposed to be, which said the original ending of Doctor Who Season 2, before the reshoots, was the Doctor, Ruby, Belinda, etc. all having a big party. Think Amy and Rory's wedding. The Vlinx is a DJ. Susan is seen watching them from afar, which would have been the cliffhanger leading into Season 3. Now, I just want to highlight, we're saying this is seemingly confirmed here, because the mother of the young Captain Poppy actress didn't explicitly say, yes, this was the original ending. But by sharing the post, it kind of confirms that this was something that was supposed to happen. The scene that would have involved her daughter would make a lot of sense for her to share that, to let everybody know that that was what was supposed to happen. Personally, I think this would have been a much better ending. You will have all, I guess if you've watched my Season 2 ups and downs, you will know that the Susan, or lack of Susan in the finale, was a big issue for me, and I think this would have been a really good cliffhanger to end the show on. I would have been really gripped by this. Now, I also heard through the grapevine that there was conversations when Ncuti announced that he was going to leave, that rather than rework episode 8, which had already been completed, they were going to attempt to create a whole new episode, an additional episode that could be his departing episode. But that ended up being too expensive, and I think Russell T Davies actually preferred the reworked episode 8 as opposed to an entirely new story. So again, just a little bit more confirmation there through the grapevine that this was something that was decided upon late in the day. But basically, to summarise this timeline, the reality war was filmed by mid-2024, and Ncuti planned to continue with the show and film more seasons. Then towards the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2025, Ncuti then decides actually he's going to leave the show. A new ending is filmed in February 2025 for the reality war, and this is what the result is. So then the big question is, why did Ncuti decide to leave the show? Now at this point, we actually don't know. We don't know exactly what his reasons are. All we can do is speculate. Now maybe one day in the future, someday down the line, in a similar vein to Christopher Eccleston, Ncuti might come forward and give the real reason why he decided to leave the show. As I say, at the moment, all we can do is speculate. Now, I don't want to suggest that this was entirely obvious, but we have been saying for quite some time here on the channel that this was likely to happen. And a big reason for that, and a lot of the speculation for this decision, revolves around Ncuti's career. We said this right from the moment he was cast. He's a young, up-and-coming actor. He was a good get for Doctor Who, but he's also one of the more famous actors to take on the role. And while that's brilliant in terms of bringing in the audience for the show, it's also an issue whereby this actor is highly sought after, and offers are going to be coming his way, and this show is only going to elevate him further, and more opportunities are going to be offered to him. Which is all very well and good if you're happy doing this show, and this show is going to keep you steady and you're enjoying doing it. But then we come to the uncertainty surrounding the green light from Disney and the future of the show. And this is the big part where our speculation that he was going to be leaving came from, because as a young up-and-coming actor, highly sought after, who wants to pursue a career in Hollywood, if you're being held back by contracts, but no guarantee of future work, and no certainty as to when this show is going to continue, if this show is going to continue, but all the while opportunities are passing you by, it doesn't really take much brain power to kind of come to the conclusion that this probably played a big part in the decision to actually say, right, I can't wait around any longer, I'm gonna have to walk away. Now earlier this year there was actually a rumour flying around that he was forced to turn down a really big perfume advert that would have paid him more for this single ad than his entire Doctor Who salary. And this was reported by a fairly trustworthy celeb gossip site called Pop Bitch back in January. Again, it doesn't surprise me to hear this. At the end of the day, as much as us fans love to watch the show and get connected and attached to the actors, they are actors, it is their job. And in any job, if you are being held back from opportunities that are being offered to you, that are offering you more money, offering you more prospects in the world of your career, you would want to drop that thing that's holding you back so that you can continue growing. It makes so much sense, and I think this is probably the most likely reason. If Series 3, Season 3 had been greenlit from the beginning and they knew they were going to be filming it and it was all a go-go, I don't think we'd have this conversation. I think Ncuti would have continued. I think the thing that's caused the problem here is the lack of confirmation with regards to the future of the show. That is my honest opinion on why the decision was made. Now, who knows? There may have been other contributing factors that we don't know about, and I don't want to speculate about things that might have happened behind the scenes because I don't know. But I definitely can see that being a very, very big reason for it. In terms of whether the situation was handled very well, obviously there was a lot of denying of a lot of rumours and speculation from the BBC, and maybe that didn't help the situation in as much as everyone was like, well, I knew that was coming. I think it was really, really good that they kind of gave us a surprise regeneration. If it weren't for all the rumours and the speculation flying around, this could have been a real shocking moment in the show, because it's the first time a departure had happened, a regeneration happened, without us being warned in advance, without us knowing in advance that this was coming. So for that, I think it was handled pretty well. You know, they did approach it in a way that was supposed to be a surprise and a shocking twist. I think it's really sad that Ncuti doesn't have doesn't have a future in the show. I mean, never say never. So many actors do come back, but I think it's sad that his run has ended too soon. And I do believe he had more to give. If nothing else, he should have fought at least a Dalek or a Cyberman. It's, you know, it's kind of the right of a Doctor to face those classic foes. And it is sad that he didn't get the opportunity to face either of those. I also think that perhaps this was the best decision for Ncuti as an actor for his career. So I don't blame him for making this decision. I also feel like there was probably so much stress behind the scenes, and I don't envy any of the people that had to deal with this situation in the build-up to this episode going out. You know, we've commented a lot that this last episode was a mess, and I don't doubt that there was a lot of mess happening behind the scenes too, and all of those people that had to deal with that stress, I hope you've had some good night's sleep since all of this has blown over. Because I really don't envy you at all. This seems like a real stressful situation. Also, anyone else noticed that literally about an hour before I started recording this, they have just announced that the Whoniverse is expanding, and we will now be having an animated Doctor Who series on CBeebies. There aren't many details on that at the moment. That's pretty much all we know so far, that there is plans for a CBeebies kind of young children focused Doctor Who animation, which is very interesting. Not where I thought the future of the show was going, but again, it's great to broaden the audience. And young children, you know, CBeebies was my childhood, so I think that is a very interesting direction to go, to try and get all the different types of an audience. I think The War Between the Land and the Sea is going to be maybe a more adult focused story. Where Doctor Who's kind of that kind of happy medium in the middle. So we'll see what happens. But obviously the Whoniverse is still chugging along, even if we have to wait a little while for the main show to be back. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on this whole situation. I'd be intrigued to know what your thoughts are. Remember to be kind. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.